Namaste and welcome to Amazing Vedas with Dr. Pariksith Singh. Thank you, Dr. Singh, for joining us. Viewers, it's a special program for us today, and that's why I've dressed for the occasion because Dr. Singh has a new book and it's called Vedas for Gen Z. So, first of all, I'm going to ask you, what made you write this book? But before you answer, I want to take you back to this wonderful book you've written, you know, the Vedas made simple. So, I thought you had, already made the Vedas simple, but apparently not simple enough. So, so tell us what made you sort of write this book?
So I would come back to my personal experience with my children. And the real kind of impetus, the thought came when my daughter was in school, and I think sixth or seventh grade, religions. And they said, okay, Hinduism is, so these are monotheistic religions, and this was a polytheistic religion. And so she comes to me and say, Hinduism is a polytheistic religion. Now, as you know, it's such a simplified, overtly stereotyped approach. So I said, it is not. And I tried to explain to her that, young girls, I think 12, 13 years old. And then I said to her, I promised her that I would write a book to explain to her what Hinduism is. Now, obviously, this was a long time ago. I didn't have time after 18 years. But over the 18 years, I've written, on Sri Aurobindo, philosophy. Nobody reads. My daughter is not going to read Sri Aurobindo in philosophy. Uh, so then we tried to do Veda made simple. And the Veda made simple was, I tried, but I guess it wasn't simple enough. So now it will be Veda made simple, made simple. I'm going to make this book simple. So, um, but as Einstein said, you should look at things in a simple manner, but not simplistically. And so Veda is a very complex work, but if you approach it in a simple manner, you can see certain patterns, a beautiful design, and certain very fundamental truths that we could adopt in our own life. And that's what I tried to bring out in a very simple language. My original draft was full of jokes. I thought Gen Z would love comedy, humor, and but the publisher said, no, 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 this is a very serious subject. You can't do this. So he took out all my jokes and left one joke in there, and then he changed
I'm
my
going to
language.
ask you to tell us some of the jokes, both
I
the
will.
one that was left and the one that couple of ones that were excluded, which I remember reading Yogi Berra and such things. But
Yes, yes.
I've seen the draft of the book, and it has many interesting things which we are going to talk about, including how AI comes into the composition process, and we'll come to that later. But I remember our early discussions on this, and you and I arguing. You telling me several years ago that I'm going to prove that the Vedas are monotheistic. And I said, no, 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 that's not the way to go because, see, you're falling into the so called Abrahamic trap, which is that they disallow, discredit, invalidate anything that even has a, whatever distant smell, if not fragrance, of many, of the plural, and therefore it's a trap. And we are not the first ones to try and counter this or fall into this trap. Ram Mohan Roy also fell into this trap, and even the great Swami Dayanand Saraswati also, under the pressure of the colonials, was essentially trying to say, oh, this is a monotheism as well. And in that sense, I feel that though the term is a little pejorative, Max Muller was far, in a way, more perceptive. He said it's henotheism, which means it's neither monotheism nor is it polytheism, which is exactly what it is. It's a different category altogether. And I think you bring that out in your book, and we're going to go into that in a moment. But one of the things that really struck me about the origins of this book is how our children who are growing up in the US come home and then they're so upset, and they say, look, what is this? This is how we are taught in school. I read another case study in which they were enacting Hindu society, apparently in some school, and the children were divided, in that school. And they were saying, okay, you are the Brahmins, you are the Kshatriyas, you are this, you're the Vaishyas, you're the Shudras, and you are the untouchables. You have to crawl, and you are. And these children came home, they were traumatized, and they asked their parents, we come from such a horrible place. And such a terrible country, so superstitious and so unequal. I mean, this was way before Black Lives Matter and these protests. And in fact, some of this led to a number of, prominent Indian Americans rising up, to counter these stereotypes. And there was the California school book controversy. I happened to be involved in it long back when Professor Shiva Bajpai was leading it, and he was a student of the great A.L. Basham from SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies, and his colleague, a fellow student and a fellow PhD student, was the great Romila Thapar, so to speak, and how they took opposite sides of this debate. So, what I'm trying to say is that it is so interesting and instructive for all of us to think about how our traditions are being represented or misrepresented, and how it's affecting the younger generation. So, books like this to me are really important. And for the community who is a stakeholder, we are stakeholders now. We are not some tiny minority. There's 5 million of us, some people say. And the way that our culture, our tradition is represented, should be in consultation with us, which is happening with all other communities. You try to do that with other religious traditions, with, say, Islam or Judaism, and you say certain things, oh my goodness, even if they are factual, you will not be allowed to say them. But in some sense, Hinduism or Sanatan traditions have either the soft underbelly or we don't respond. So I'm very glad you brought in the context of how this book came about. And I also want to ask you this. I mean, how simple is simple now? Because I'm asking you this from the other point of view. Like when, for example, just another little anecdote, how you discovered the secret of the Veda. I discovered it too, maybe a couple of years earlier, but our source was the same. It was Sri Aurobindo. We've been engaging with Sri Aurobindo for such a long time. And unfortunately, our mentors or teachers or, whoever, at least I got mentored, by very senior sadhaks of the Sri Aurobindo ashram. Many of them are no more. People like Amal Kiran, who was a great, as you know, not just a sadhak, but a authority of English literature and Greek literature. Nirod Baran, whom I met personally, Nirodha, and you know, all these great people, MP Pandit, and so on. I mean, everybody. I mean, I'm talking about 20 years ago, 30 years ago. All the senior sadhaks I tried to meet personally, right? Uh, Now, nobody told me, go and read The Secret of the Veda. You know what they told me? Many, I mean, I won't take names, but they would say to me, for example, read the mother. That's it. You read the mother, which is not wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. Say, read the mother. That's all you need to know, and that's all you'll ever know. You don't need to know anything else. Or some people would tell me, read the synthesis of yoga. That's the book to read, right? Or another person like Prashantji, whom I was also close to, still am close to, in the Delhi ashram, who's read a lot. He grew up in the ashram. He would also say, he would always say, read the read the
Essays.
essays on the Gita, because don't go into cellular yoga, don't go into all of this, don't read the agenda. The Gita is the key. And many people would tell me, forgetting that I'm a professor, don't read the Life Divine because it's too difficult. So obviously I try to read everything. I've edited anthologies on Sri Aurobindo long back and so on. But what I'm trying to say is, like you possibly, I came to the secret of the Veda a bit late. And when I read it, it just completely blew my mind, right? And so, just to finish the story, I used to give talks, I still do, on Sri Aurobindo here, there, and everywhere. Now I'm invited once again on 16th of August in the Sunday satsang of Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch. So, and they want me to talk on music. The reason I'm putting this out is because whenever I say I'll talk on the Veda, they'll say, no, 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 no. Even Aurobindonians, no, no, no,
Why?
no, no, don't talk on the Veda. Oh, it's so difficult. It's so complicated. And the traditional pundits, we started a thing called Living Veda. Many traditional pundits would come and say, this is not the Veda. I don't know where Sri Aurobindo is getting his interpretations. And then we had to show them Siddhanjana, which they had not read, right? So my question to you was, how simple is simple? Because people are going to pounce on you. I'm sorry to say this, and I hope it never happens, but they're going to say, Arey, what is this? These are the sacred scriptures, Aparushya hai, and you have simplified it. You're putting jokes also. So, what were you thinking? The risks you've taken. Like, what were you thinking when you decided to write this book?
So let me have some news for you. Our rishis were jokesters. Shunak Shape, who names himself after the tail of a dog. What a beautiful pun. He has named himself Shunak Shape. Beautiful pun. Shaunak is someone who's enlightened. You know this, right?
Yes,
But
there's a
Shunak
Rishi, there's a
Shape,
Shaunak Rishi also.
yes. Shunak Shape is, and there's a beautiful story about him, right? The whole question of him being tied up, Harishchandra, Raja Harishchandra, he doesn't want to give his son to Varuna, so he takes this kid for sacrifice. Now, when you think of sacrifice, you say, oh my God, Narbali, right? That they're going to kill him. But the rishis tie him up on a pillar, three three ropes. Then he prays to Varuna, and the ropes fall off, and they accept him as a rishi with that knowledge. Rishi Vishwamitra accepts him as his own, in his own lineage. Now, for such a person to call himself the tail of a dog, now our rishis were enlightened beings, and they were also people who took themselves very lightly, and that's probably why they were enlightened. We're we are so hung up on being serious. We have done a serious disservice by making it so heavy. You know what it is? I'm sorry, but I'm going to say this, and let me be attacked for this. People who learn the chanting, the shiksha, people who learn a little bit of the Vedanga, then they don't want anyone else to talk about it. Anytime you say something, oh, but this is what the tradition is. You know what? This is just a mind control, this is culture control, and this is control from the ego. Anyone and everyone has the right to approach the Veda in a very simple manner, which is how we should read anything anyway. If you go with baggage, what are you going to learn? Approach it in the simplest manner. Whatever you get out of that immense treasure is yours, right? So I still humbly submit that we can approach the Veda in a very simple manner. In fact, that is the only way to approach the Veda. When you approach a great work of art, how do you approach it? Not with baggage. You approach T.S. Eliot, four quartets. I have told you that. It took me 6 months to understand the first three lines of four quartets. That was the first poem I was given as an introduction to great English poetry. But then what happens? Suddenly a new world opened before me. Once I figured out what he was saying, I would almost come to tears. Krishnamurti would drive me crazy. I cried. In Delhi ashram, I was 18. I cried. I bawled my heart out because what is he saying and what is the mother saying? Oh my God, what a contradiction. I respected them. I loved them both. What are you doing? Here someone is taking away everything you have, and here is someone is giving you the whole universe. Total positivity, total negation. Neti neti, iti iti. And I cried and I cried. And I think it was good that I cried. Because suddenly you let go of everything and you approach things very simply. And I think we have to approach the Veda very simply. Don't take old theories. I think that's how Sri Aurobindo discovered beautiful things in it. And that is how each of us can discover. It has to be ours. It cannot be because Sri Aurobindo says it, or Swami Dayananda says it, or Sayana says it. No, we have to approach the Veda because the Veda is here, and the external Veda is here to help us discover that inner Veda. And the way to approach it, you can use the tools to make it simple. We all do. But eventually, we have to connect with it ourselves inwardly. That is the inner connection. And if I may say so, if our children are not able to connect with it in a very natural, spontaneous manner, with laughter, with fun, with joy, with passion, they will lose. Our future generations will not have the Veda as part of their inheritance. That Veda which our generations gave their life to preserve for us will be lost unless we bring it to our children in a manner that they awaken, that something awakens. I want to go and study the Veda. That should be the passion. It's like, I remember Pritish Nandi used to say, our poetry, he used to criticize English poetry. He used to say poetry should be poetry with a guitar. So I'm saying Veda should be Veda with a joke. And
Absolutely. So, viewers, I get three very important points from here. That if you don't want the Vedas just to be a dead book from
yes,
the past, you have to approach it with simplicity, with joy, but also with passion. And I just wanted to say one thing. If you do so, I can assure you it'll completely open up. Now, just to conclude this episode on the story of Kshepa, it's a very complex story, viewers. So even if you approach it simply, something amazing starts happening. And we are going to do a separate episode on this because at its most basic level, it's the equivalent of the Abrahamic story of Abraham offering his firstborn, as a sacrifice to the Lord and then being saved. And that's how you still have, the sacrifice of the lamb or Bakrid among the Muslims. So it's a story of sacrifice and substitution and of grace, of how he's saved. And the father who agrees for the trade is so clever because he knows. Otherwise, and then also the middle son, there's so many angles. But the one thing I wanted to say is that no Vedic story is simple because it's full of symbols and the
yes,
story continues in the Puranas. And the
yes.
Harishchandra stories we know are Puranic stories, you see. But the Vedic story of Harishchandra is so different. So all I'm trying to say is that yes, approach it with simplicity, with joy, with humor, with passion, and with humility, and it'll open itself up. So, simplicity is not a deal breaker. So, for people who want to criticize, let them read the book, and through the book or otherwise, go to the Vedas. It's an open book. It's not a closed book. So, with these words, viewers, thank you for joining us today. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Check us out on X, Amazing Vedas. Once again, thank you and see you soon.